The Lebanese city of Baalbek lies in the Bacchus River Valley at the foot of the southwestern slope of the anti-Lebanese mountains. The former Roman colony, Heliopolis, or the City of the Sun, was one of the biggest sacred building complexes of the Roman Empire. The temple complex is the largest ruin of the era in the whole Middle East. Thanks to its monumental ruins, Baalbek has been a part of the World Heritage since 1984. Baalbek was already inhabited in the early Bronze Age. Then, it became a Phoenician settlement around 2000 BC. The Phoenicians' first temple was dedicated to Baal, the sun god, after whom the city received its name. The origin of the name Baalbek is not precisely known. The Phoenician term Baal means Lord or God. The word Baalbek may therefore mean God of the Bacchus Valley. According to tradition, Abraham lived near Baalbek. Besides him, Cain and Noah have also been associated with the city. 19th century Bible archaeologists believe that Baalbek was Baal god mentioned in the book of Joshua. This assertion has seldom been taken up in modern times, because this minor Phoenician city lacked the commercial or strategic importance to rate a mention in Assyrian or Egyptian records so far uncovered. The city was probably the home to an important oracle even in the earliest times, and it retained its religious function during the Greco-Roman era, when the sanctuary of the Heliopolitan Jupiter Baal was a pilgrimage site. Trajan's biographer records that the emperor consulted the Heliopolitan Jupiter whether he would return alive from his wars against the Parthians. In reply, the god presented him with a vine shoot cut into pieces. Starting in the last quarter of the 1st century over a period of 2 centuries, the Romans had built a temple complex in Baalbek consisting of 3 temples, for Jupiter, Bacchus, and Venus. On a nearby hill, they built a 4th temple, dedicated to Mercury. Basically, 3 ancient deities were worshipped in Roman guise. Jupiter, the god of storms, stood in for Baal-Hadad. Venus, goddess of love, for Ashtart, and Bacchus, god of wine and ecstasy, for Dionysus. Roman constructions were built on top of earlier Phoenician ruins. First, an immense raised plaza was created. The sloping terrain necessitated the creation of retaining walls on the north, south, and west sides of the plaza. The monoliths of the lowest level each weighed approximately 400 tons. The western, tallest retaining wall has a second course of monoliths containing the famous tritholon, a row of 3 stones, each weighing around 1,000 tons. A 4th, even larger stone, called Hajar el-Gubal, Stone of the South, or Hajar el-Hible, Stone of the Pregnant Woman, lies unused in a nearby quarry. If if it was dragged from its place, it would be the largest stone ever to be moved, bigger than the famous unfinished obelisk in Aswan, Egypt. The temples were consecrated by the Syrian emperor Septimus Severus, whose coins show 2 Heliopolitan temples. Other emperors, among them the Syrian Caracalla, enriched the temple complex even further. Philip the Arab was the last to add a monument to Heliopolis, the hexagonal forecourt. The greatest of the 3 temples was sacred to Jupiter Baal, Heliopolitan Zeus, identified here with the sun. Jupiter Baal was represented on coins as a beardless god in a long scaly drapery, holding a whip in his right hand and thunderbolts and ears of wheat in his left. 2 bulls supported him. He passed into European worship in the 3rd and 4th century, and his bronze statuette was discovered at Tortosa, Spain, and Byblos in Phoenicia. The Temple of Jupiter, located 13 meters higher than the surrounding plaza and 7 meters higher than the Great Court, is made up of 4 parts and was the biggest temple of the Roman Empire. Its impressive entrance, the propylaea, is an ornate gate with 2 towers accessible via a 45-meter-wide stairway. Temple also has a hexagonal forecourt, a 134-meter by 112-meter great court with the sacrificial altar and finally the sanctuary itself. The enormous temple was surrounded by 104 monumental granite columns brought here from Aswan. The chapel itself stood on an 88-meter by 48-meter rectangular platform made of huge ashlars and was surrounded by another 50 large columns. The construction of the Temple of Jupiter started during the reign of Augustus, and in 14 BC was completed around 60 AD during the reign of Nero. The latter built the tower altar opposite the Temple of Jupiter, while the great forecourt was added by Trajan. Several religious buildings and altars stood here, and the huge square was surrounded by a spectacular row of porticos made of pink granite brought from Aswan in Egypt. Today, besides the foundation of the temple, only 6 Corinthian columns remain standing. 8 more were disassembled and shipped to Turkey under Justinian's orders for his Basilica of Hagia Sophia. Stone blocks support the pillars that have remained intact. They're decorated with beautiful friezes of lion and bull heads connected by wreaths. This masterpiece of Greco-Roman architecture was dedicated to Bacchus, but was traditionally referred to by neoclassical visitors as the Temple of the Sun. The temple was commissioned by Antonius Pius, who had it decorated with rich carvings and statues. With its well-preserved cella and reliefs adorning the gate and adyton, it is an impressive example of Roman architecture and decorative art. Besides its marvelous decorations, its significance comes from the fact that it is the best preserved Middle Eastern temple of the Roman era in the world. When the temple complex fell into disrepair, the temple of Bacchus was protected by the rubble of the rest of the site's ruins. The 69-meter by 36-meter temple is located parallel to the Temple of Jupiter, but a level below it, and is surrounded by 22 columns each, with a height of almost 19 meters. The walls of the temple are almost perfectly intact. Only its roof has collapsed. Today, concerts are held in the temple. The Temple of Venus, or the Round Temple, was built in the beginning of the 3rd century, next to the Temple of Jupiter. As its name suggests, this is a small, pentagonal temple with a round base built upon the order of Septimus Severus. It is assumed that the temple was decorated by seashells, pigeons, and other art motifs associated with the cult of the goddess. During Byzantine Christian times, the temple was used as a church and dedicated to the Christian martyr Saint Barbara. Early Christian writers were greatly outraged by the Venus cult. Eusebius of Caesarea asserted that men and women vie with one another to honor their shameless goddess. Husbands and fathers let their wives and daughters publicly prostitute themselves to please Ashtart. Constantine, making an effort to curb the Venus cult, built a basilica in Heliopolis. Theodosius I erected another, with the western apse occupying the main court of the Jupiter temple, as was Christian practice everywhere. The vast stone blocks of its walls were taken from the temple itself. Today, nothing of the Theodosian basilica remains. Western travelers discovered the picturesque ruins in the 18th century. One of the most prominent of these was the English Robert Wood, who made carefully measured engravings for the ruins of Baalbek, which provided excellent new details of Corinthian columns that European neoclassical architects used in their plans. Even in the second half of the 18th century, Baalbek was no destination for the traveler unaccompanied by an armed guard, and mass tourism only started in 1864. In November 1898, the German Emperor Wilhelm II, on his way to Jerusalem and passing by Baalbek, was struck by the magnificence of the ruins projecting from the rubble, and within a month, the German archaeological team he dispatched was at work on the site. The campaign produced meticulously presented and illustrated series of volumes. Baalbek, with its colossal structures, is one of the finest examples of Imperial Roman architecture at its apogee, UNESCO reported in making Baalbek a World Heritage Site. When the committee inscribed the site, it expressed the wish that the protected area include the entire town within the Arab walls, as well as the southwestern extramural quarter between Bastan el-Khan, the Roman site, and the Mamluk Mosque of Ras Al Ain.